Over the last few weeks, we've done a couple of episodes on planning. How do you plan for your best year as you go into it individually? And then we also talked about planning for your team. That's pretty exciting as you start thinking about the upcoming year. We're winding down 2025 in the next few weeks, months, and we get a chance to do some resetting. And so we're excited about that. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Randy Gravitt. Welcome to the Lead Everyday Show.
And I'm Mark Miller. Before we jump in, Randy, how are you feeling?
Well, I've been a little bit under the weather lately, as you know, but I'm hanging in there, so I'm ready to make some more content here.
I'm hanging on as well, so let's cheer each other on here.
Battling the fall, the fall fatigue. I don't know.
It's good to see you.
A couple of travel, I just got back from the West Coast, a couple of days on the West Coast, and that probably didn't help. Quick turnaround. So, but I'm here, man. I'm ready to go. I'm excited about the year. And I know, let me kind of start off in that vein, because I know you and I both are probably, I'm going to say optimistic. I probably should use the word delusional, because we're about the most optimistic guys I know in some ways. And we're always excited about the future, and we're always excited about what's next. And especially this time of year, I don't know about you, but I do know about you. You're kind of like me. We get a little giddy as we start thinking about the coming year. And as we've been talking about this planning the last couple of weeks, I think we may have left something off that I want us to focus on today. So I know you're probably fired up today too, because I know
I am ready. I think my optimism peaks in the fourth quarter every year. I mean, I think it starts high, but as I begin to think every year about the opportunities ahead, the things we can do, the things we can accomplish, the people we can meet, the progress we can make as individual leaders. I just enter every year fully jazzed.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you and I are a lot like most leaders. We have great intentions, and most of the leaders I know, if we're not careful, our intentions really won't become reality unless we turn our intentions into action. So I want today us to think a little bit about how do we move from intention to reality. I think that's an important concept.
Yeah, and I love that phrase. You probably know the late Warren Bennis, the great leadership thinker from USC. His definition of leadership are men and women who can turn intention into reality and sustain it. So I love talking about helping leaders actually do the thing, whatever it is we're talking about, because that's where the traction is. It's in the doing. And I'm excited to give folks some really practical and tactical things today that will help them make next year their best year ever.
That's great. I'm quoting Warren Bennis and didn't even realize it there. And and I'm a fan of his work too. Back in the day, it's been a while since I've read it and stuff. So maybe some of that got into my brain through osmosis.
Yeah, I think so.
But I want us to go down this road a little bit. And I said we left something off in our planning conversation. We didn't really talk about how we get to do some things differently in the next year. And you've written about this discipline before of reinventing continuously. And I love the fact that we do get to do some things differently. I've mentioned here before, we don't get do-overs. I mean, I really wish we had some do-overs. There's some things that I would do differently if I could go back this year. But I like the idea, and I've been saying it for a few months now, you don't get do-overs, but you do get start-overs. And as the new year comes around, or as you start your planning for the new year, what are some things that you need to reinvent? Anybody listening today, there's some things that really we can do to reinvent continuously. Again, Mark, you've written about this. I know you're passionate about it, but I love the idea that we get a chance to reset going into this fall as we start thinking about 2026. And this reinventing continuously is a powerful mindset.
Yeah. So let me say a couple things about that. I love the way you set that up. We have the opportunity to reset. My encouragement to those of you that are watching and listening is take that opportunity, because if we're not thoughtful and if we're not intentional, January will be a repeat of December, and next year will be a repeat of this year. Now, hopefully you had a great year this year, but if you had a great year, what could you do to make it even better? What could you do to build on the successes of this year? Not just focus on the things that you need to do better because you screwed it up last year. Let's build strength on strength. So reinvent continuously is actually one of the fundamentals of leadership that our team identified 25 years ago. Some of you know that we did some global benchmarking and have since followed it up with global research to figure out what are those core and essential things that the best leaders do. We're not going to talk about all those today, but one of those is to reinvent continuously. And so let me give you a quick working definition. Then we're going to move real quick into how do you activate. And to reinvent continuously is to routinely escape the bounds of the present and what you know. Because if you stick with what you know, next January, January is going to be just like December. So you have to consciously escape, at least mentally. And when you escape, you begin to pursue better methods, improved skills, and improved outcomes. You're really, to reinvent continuously is the pursuit of better. And it's a choice. And so we want to talk to you today about how to activate on that choice.
That's great. I'll kick us off, Mark. I love that the way you set that up too. So I like the setup of this whole thing. But before we dive into some things that we can do, I think I'd like to start with some things we maybe need to stop doing. And I remember years ago, this was interesting. You came to me and you were thinking about starting a blog, and and you asked me about that because I'd been blogging for a while before that, and one of the things I remember asking you was, "What are you going to stop doing?" And you said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, if you're going to start this, I know how your schedule is. You don't really have any more capacity here to add something, as big as a blog felt back in the day, and people may not even remember what blogs are at this point."
Right.
It's, I said, because I've been doing it for a while, they come like the tide. Like every night, if you're going to write every day, you gotta have some time blocked out. And so it's, what are you going to stop doing? Well, I remember it was about that time that we did a, I don't know if it was what year it was, but when Henry Cloud came out with the book Necessary Endings, but I remember both of us being just blown away by the concept in the book. And it's pretty simple. But Henry talked about the idea of pruning back things in your life. He builds that book really, if you remember, around the gardener who has the rose bush that there's just more buds than what the bush can cause to flourish. And so it's the good gardener, which I'm my thumbs aren't green at all. I don't know anything about this, but I did read Henry's book, and it's the good gardener who understands if you prune it back, then the bush can be really healthy. And I think before we start thinking about what do we want to reinvent, what do we want to do differently, what do we want to add, let's make sure that we give ourselves permission to stop doing some things. I heard years ago Bob Goff giving a keynote, and he said in the keynote, I love this, I guess he's maybe trying to get a laugh in the keynote, but maybe this is what he really does. He said, I try to quit something every Thursday. And I think for most leaders, that would be a pretty good discipline over the next few weeks, is just to decide every Thursday what's coming off my list for the coming years. Yeah. So as we start down this road here, let's not fail to give ourselves permission to prune back some things that maybe as we look back on our calendar from this last year, they didn't work. They weren't successful. Yeah. They didn't give us the return we wanted. And so we do have permission. Henry's also the one who says, you're ridiculously in charge. And so as you think about what you're going to do, maybe the most important question is, what are you not going to do to position yourself to do these things that you got goals towards? So I'm sure you got thoughts on that, Mark, but
I love it. And I think that book is the kind of book that folks are going to be reading 500 years from now. I think it is a classic. You may remember, I bought 1,000 copies when it came out. Sent one, well, maybe more than that. I may have bought 2,000 copies.
You probably did. I don't know.
Sent them to everybody in our organization, all of our field, all the restaurants, all the staff. I sent them all a copy of it. Henry believes that if you could line up all the leaders on the planet and rank order them based on their effectiveness and their impact, he said the ones that would be at the head of the line are the men and women who've embraced and understand and apply the concept of necessary endings. He thinks it's the differentiator for the really elite leaders. And it's hard for me, and it's hard for most of the leaders I know, which is one reason I got so excited about the book. But I want to add just one thing to what you said about the gardener. I just want to unpack it just a little bit more. Henry asked if you'd ever seen a rose bush that was ugly. Well, I have. I got one in my yard. And he said, well, the chances are it's ugly because it's not been pruned. And you reference this, that there'll be more buds than the plant can actually nourish. It'll never thrive unless it's pruned. And he said, so the gardener, again, to repeat what you said, they're gonna cut some things that don't work. Henry actually said, cut the dead stuff. He said, but the wise gardener doesn't stop there. They're also going to cut the stuff that is struggling, that they don't anticipate will recover. And then he said, they cut some healthy things in order to allow other things to thrive. So this is, yes, we start with cutting what doesn't work, but if we're going to do this the way Henry advocates, we've got to be a little more thoughtful, a little more strategic, and it requires a little bit of courage, particularly when you start cutting stuff that's working, because you're trying to feed and fuel something else. Well, and so I try to begin. I don't do every Thursday. I don't do that, but I certainly do that when I move into a new year.
Well, think about it, Mark. It's like when we start cutting the things that you're describing, we've been doing them for months, and we've been doing them for months because we believe in them to some
or years,
maybe
or years.
And maybe they're not. Let's go back to what you said there. Maybe they're not dead. Maybe they are kind of. We're pretty successful with them, and so I think emotionally, it's really hard to let those things go. Don't you think? I mean, that.
Oh, I do.
The challenge
again. That's why there's so very few leaders that ever master this, because they. Again, I don't know. I'm not one of those leaders yet. I'm still trying to be one of those leaders, but I don't have the clarity, the conviction, or the courage to do as much of this as I need to. So I'm working on it again. I'm working on it still. And I think that goes back to the metaphor just a little bit here. The gardener doesn't prune one time. It's an ongoing process of cultivating and nurturing health and vitality. And so I think some of the folks out there watching or listening to this, they need to have a hard conversation with themselves about what they need to cut in the new year.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You've reminded me for years that not just Henry, John Maxwell, doesn't he say you have to give up to go up? It's like, it's just, you've got to be willing to let go stuff if you're going to go to this next level. And Henry even said, if you remember, that what he thought separated the top 1% of leaders, like the 99% all down from the 100, like that very top, is their ability to say no and to do what we're talking about. And so not just cut back some things, but be able to say no to some things that seem to be great opportunities, but we all struggle with capacity. So anybody listening out there, you do have permission to say no, and you do have permission to stop doing some of the things that you are doing. So
let me build on that with an idea. And I don't want to put this on Henry because I don't remember him saying this, but I've actually done this. Let's take this another step, because everything we just talked about, it's about me and it's about you, the listener. It's about you, Randy. Okay. So this is can be a very individual exercise, and I think it needs to be, but I've actually done stop doing meeting. And what the meeting you publish for whoever is in your area of responsibility, your team. I published and tell the team, we're going to have a meeting, and the price of admission is you have to bring at least one idea for something that we will consider stop doing. And some people bring a list, and some people bring one thing, and some people don't come to the meeting because they don't have anything they want to talk about. And we have had some very productive conversations. We've actually stopped doing some things, and everything that is presented, we don't decide to stop doing it. And that's when you have a conversation, you debate and you discuss and you look at the pros and cons. But you may want to have a stop doing meeting and get the folks around you to help you think as a team or as a department or as an organization, are there some things that need to be pruned?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so let's shift here to another idea, and I'm gonna do a little stealing here from you. Say it's okay to cheat off the another leader's paper when you hear a good idea. you talk about this all the time. And so I'm probably stealing this from you. I know it's been a subtext on a lot of our podcasts through the years, but let's talk here for a second about if we're going to really make 2026 a great year, and we're going to reinvent continuously at the highest level. I think we need to ask more and better questions. I'll just use your phrase. You've written about that. You've talked about that. We've talked about that. You're really great at questions, Mark. I think this is one of the things that I just keep talking to leaders, and I think so many people struggle to ask more questions. They're just, first of all, we're leaders and we're talking a lot, but if we're not careful, we won't really have anything to say if we're not asking ourselves the right questions. And so I think it's a part of reinventing continuously. I would even say it's a discipline here. You shared the idea of doubling the number. I think you talked about this a couple of weeks ago, doubling the number of questions that we ask and then double it again. Somebody had told you that one time. And
yeah, Jim Collins,
like that,
he told our whole organization that we should double our question to statement ratio and then double it again. And that's on a daily basis.
Yeah, ain't that crazy? And so I just think what I'm going to do over these next few weeks is I'm asking myself the question, what questions do I need to ask? And I'm making a list. And so I would just encourage anybody listening to ask more questions, but ask better questions. What are the questions you need to ask? So Mark, you probably got some examples here. We can talk about a few. I've got a couple, but where we start there?
Well, let me say this. This is my personal experience, and I've talked to so many other leaders who agree. I'm not assuming you all agree with this, but here's what I've learned over the decades. The more questions I ask, the better I lead. Not just in the context of planning for next year, but in my day-to-day life, as part of my routine. The more questions I ask, the better I lead. I mean, you think about what's going on when you ask a thought-provoking a question. Well, if you don't know the answer, and by the way, I'm not a fan of only asking questions that you know the answer to. I think that's what attorneys do when they're in a trial setting, right? They're trying to set somebody up or bait them or elicit a particular response. And that may be fine in that setting. In our world, I don't think you only ask questions that you know the answers to. I think you should ask more questions that you have no idea what the answer is. And when you do that, a couple things happen. I mean, probably many, but two things for sure. The person you're asking has an opportunity to help you learn and grow if they know the answer. And if they don't know the answer, maybe it's an opportunity for them to get smarter, because maybe your response is, maybe we should figure the answer out to that question. And so it accelerates learning, and it can take you places that you've never been before. When you ask a question, and let me just say this, sometimes the best questions are the ones that no one knows the answers to. I was talking to a group just recently, and I said, don't shy away from the really hard questions, because they might, at the end of the day, turn out to be the most productive questions that you could possibly ask. So that's kind of a little bit of a setup. Some good questions. I think you need to have a candid conversation about the challenges and obstacles that your team or organization is facing. And I think you ought to make a list, and you might, if you've got a lot, you might want to list them on a flip chart or on a whiteboard. I mean, literally brainstorm. What are some of those opportunities? And then I like a follow-up question. What do we believe the root cause to be for this problem or obstacle or opportunity? Because I think you probably all know from experience, the presenting problem is rarely the real problem. I mean, it's a problem, but it's not what's causing the situation. When an employee doesn't do something that they're supposed to do, okay, that's a problem. The real problem is, how were they recruited? How were they selected? How were they trained? How were they onboarded? How are they being led? What kind of feedback and coaching are they getting? That's where you got the root problem, when an employee doesn't do something they're supposed to do. Even though in the moment you'll go, look at that employee, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Isn't that a problem? Well, okay, yeah. Don't get caught there. You need to go upstream and try and figure out what are the root causes.
Yeah, I love that, Mark, especially as we start thinking about the next year. Like, what challenges am I up against right now? Right? What's really my biggest challenge? And that gives me a way to plan and to think. And and maybe go into attack mode. And I think another question that I'll build on it is I like to ask, what are other people doing to successfully overcome this challenge? Because I'm probably not the only person, or our team is not the only team that's faced this challenge. And some people have probably overcome it. And so what can we learn from them? I mean, that'd be another kind of question that you could ask yourself.
Absolutely.
So I think that's, I love the spirit of that.
And then I would quickly say, when you discover that someone else has dealt with the problem that you're wrestling with, when you find that they've done it successfully, you need to tap the brakes just a little bit, because our first instinct is to copy what they did. There may be things that we can learn from them, but solutions are context dependent. And you don't know their culture. You don't know their people. You don't know their training methods. And so learn from others for sure, but just be really careful if you say, well, let's just do it exactly the way our competitor did it, or let's do it exactly the way that someone in another industry did it. Might work, probably will need some adaptation or modification to make the similar concepts work in your situation.
Yeah, that's good.
So here's another one. Go ahead. You got one?
Well, I was going to say, I like to ask these little questions that kind of break my brain sometimes. So for example, if we had unlimited budget and time and resources and all the people we need, what would we do to improve our situation? Or crazy questions like, what if we had to double our revenue and we only had half of our team to do that? Or what if we could only pick one thing to do? Like, out of all the things we're doing, what if we could only pick one thing? What would that thing be? And all of a sudden you start, and how could we 10X our weakest vertical? I mean, any kind of questions that are just cause your brain to go, well, that's not possible. Well, all of a sudden you start thinking and having conversations with the people in your organization, and you might discover that something's out there that you've just not been asking the right questions or pushing hard enough. Maybe we've even gotten complacent, or success is, we can let it, that can be our quicksand. We've said that before here. So I think some of those kind of questions that are just, kind of off the rails. I mean, they can get back on track.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the comment I made about a really good question can take you somewhere you've never been, because you've probably never thought about what would we do with unlimited time, energy, and effort and budget. And you probably never thought, what would we have to do to 10X? I had an example of that several years ago. I was working with a literary agent and social media group, and they were excited. And I was too. Let me be really clear. I was excited that we had, I don't know what it was, 100 Amazon reviews on a new book. Yeah. And I said, well, that's good. I mean, I'm thankful for that. I really am. And for everybody that wrote a review, I said, but you do realize that for this first wave, we gave the books away. I said, it'd kind of be good if we sold some books. And they said, well, yeah, but right now we got some Facebook reviews. I said, yeah, but what would it take to get 10 million people to read the book, or 10 million people to write a review? And their first response, the exact quote was, well, we'd have to think about this fundamentally differently. And I said, well, now let's talk about that. Maybe we can have a productive conversation, because we've actually asked a question that, as you said, kind of makes your brain blow up. It's like, well, we were trying to get 100 Facebook reviews or Amazon reviews. We weren't trying to reach 10 million people. Well, good. We got that. Thankful for that. But those questions, they can really free your mind. I mean, the power of questions, it's hard to describe. If you don't use them often, it's hard to comprehend how powerful they are. And those constraints that you can apply, those constraints often are exactly what you need to unlock creativity and new levels of thinking.
Okay, so as we think about reinventing continuously, we've said so far that we need to stop doing some stuff, right? We need to prune. We need to ask more and better questions. Have you got a third one for us before we go here today? What you got?
Well, it's related to what I just shared. I'm encouraging leaders. You talked about you've been on something for the last few months. I tell you what I've been on for the last few months, and I think it may be because we're entering the fourth quarter. We're thinking about next year. I'm actually encouraging leaders to dream big. I mean, what could you accomplish? What could you strive for? As that last example illustrated, we had to think differently, and we are thinking differently, trying to reach millions of leaders and serve millions of leaders versus serving 100 leaders. Thankful to serve 100 leaders. I hope some of you listening feel like you're being served, but we want to steward this content, and we want to dream big, and we want to encourage you to dream big. If you're not energized about reinventing, it might be that your goals aren't big enough. It's just a possibility. I mean, I don't know your situation, but people with big dreams, I find, are more likely to reinvent, because you got to find new methods. You got to develop new skills. You're looking for better outcome. So my encouragement to you is dream big.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and you have to connect the dots, because let's go back to this idea. One of the things we do dream big. I know at one point you're like, how do we reach 10 million leaders? And then we started thinking about how do we reach 100 million leaders, which sounds crazy. But, when I think about the podcast, when I think about the stuff that we're doing, I looked the other day, I think we've been downloaded now in 155 countries. I mean, it does break your brain when you think about how the world works now. I mean, it's just information travels so far and so fast. But let's go back to even the website as an example. I did Stuart tell me there's 50,000 people a month coming to the website. So you got literally 500,000 people a year coming to the website. So we're changing the website. We're
reinventing it. Yeah, because
that's something
it needs to be better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it.
I got one Instagram post right now. I think it's over 500,000 views. Well, so I don't know that 100 million is too many, right? How about this? When we get there, we'll just set another goal. We'll call 100 million leaders served a milestone. How about that?
That's great. But this idea of dreaming big it's amazing what has happened, because the leader just said, I've got a dream, and it can start anywhere. So I love that reminder. Okay. So we have three things. We're going to reinvent continuously. We have a stop doing list. We want to ask more and better questions. And then finally, we want to dream big, and it's really about that fundamental of reinventing continuously. And I know, Mark, I'm assuming you got some stuff that you're reinventing. I know I'm doing some stuff, trying to make some changes, but I know we're actually, for the podcast today, we haven't shared this yet. But today is our last episode for the season, our 2025 season. This will end the year for us here, and so we'll have a couple of months here, and if people are listening and they've missed anything, they can catch up on any of the episodes over these last few weeks. But I hope people will really take what we've been talking about and do some deeper planning maybe than they've done before, because I think that plan really positions us to be more effective, which is leaders. That's what we're paid to do. We're paid for our effectiveness, right? I mean, would you say it that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, and then for the show, I'll say this: we're going to reinvent a little bit of the way we're doing this. I think next we've been meeting with our team, and we're trying to do some things as we come into 2026. So if you're a listener, you'll hear more about that in the weeks to come. But we're excited about the future, and anybody listening here, I'm excited about your future. I hope you'll really focus on planning, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, but today, this idea of reinventing, you don't have to have the same plan that you've had. I want to encourage you, go after better this next year, but better is always going to be different. It is going to require you to change. It's going to require you to reinvent, and you're going to have to do it not just one time, but as Mark even said about the pruning, it's going to over and over and over again. It's what great leaders do. So, Mark, final word here. You got anything?
Yeah, I want to go back to something you mentioned in passing, but you have challenged me for several years as we've kind of put a bow on this whole planning thing. You've challenged me, don't just try to make next year better, which is what I've done my whole life. You challenged me, what would it take to make next year your best year ever? And in the spirit of dreaming big, that's what I'm working on. And I hope that's what our listeners will try to do. What could you do? What would you need to do to make next year your best year? I'm betting that part of the answer is to reinvent continuously.
That's fantastic. Great reminder. What a goal to make 2026 our best year ever. All right. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.